Stanford Prison. The Stanford Prison experiment was a psychological study of human responses to captivity and its behavioral effects on both authorities and inmates in prison. The experiment was conducted in 1971 by a team of researchers which was led by psychologist Philip Zimbardo at Stanford University. Undergraduate volunteers played the roles of both guards and prisoners living in a mock prison in the basement of the Stanford Psychology Building. Both the prisoners and guards rapidly adapted to their roles, stepping beyond the boundaries of what had been predicted and leading to dangerous and psychologically damaging situations. One-third of the guards were judged to have exhibited genuine sadistic tendencies, while many prisoners were emotionally traumatized, and 2 had to be removed from the experiment early. Finally, Zimbardo, alarmed at the increasingly abusive antisocial behavior from his subjects, terminated the entire experiment early. Project MK-Ultra. Project MK-Ultra was a code name for a CIA mind control research program run by the Office of Scientific Intelligence that began in the early 1950s and continued at least through the late 1960s. There is much published evidence that the project involved the surreptitious use of many types of drugs, as well as other methodologies to manipulate individual mental states and to alter brain function. Experiments included administering LSD to CIA employees, military personnel, doctors, and other government agents, prostitutes, mentally ill patients, and members of the general public in order to study their reactions. LSD and other drugs were usually administered without the subject's knowledge and informed consent, a violation of the Nuremberg Code that the US agreed to follow after World War II. Efforts to recruit subjects were often illegal, even discounting the fact that drugs were being administered through actual use of LSD, for example, which was illegal in the United States until October 6, 1966. In Operation Midnight Climax, the CIA set up several brothels to obtain a selection of men who would be too embarrassed to talk about the events. The men were dosed with LSD, and the brothels were equipped with one-way mirrors, and the sessions were filmed for later viewing and study. In 1973, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered all MK-Ultra files destroyed. Pursuant to this order, most CIA documents regarding the project were destroyed, making a full investigation of MK-Ultra virtually impossible. Unit 731. Unit 731 was a covert biological and chemical warfare research and development unit of the Imperial Japanese Army that undertook lethal human experimentation during the Second Sino-Japanese War and World War II. It was responsible for some of the most notorious war crimes carried out by the Japanese personnel. Some of the numerous atrocities committed by the commander Shiro Ishii and others under his command in Unit 731 include vivisection of living people, including pregnant ladies who were impregnated by the doctors. Prisoners had limbs amputated and reattached to other parts of their body. Some prisoners had parts of their bodies frozen and thawed to study the resulting untreated gangrene. Humans were also used as living test causes for grenades and flamethrowers. Prisoners were injected with strains of diseases disguised as vaccinations to study their effects. To study the effects of untreated venereal diseases, male and female prisoners were deliberately infected with syphilis and gonorrhea via rape, then studied. Having been granted immunity by the American occupation authorities at the end of the war, Ishii never spent any time in jail for his crimes and died at the age of 67. Nazi experimentations. Nazi human experimentation was medical experimentation on large numbers of people by the German Nazi regime in its concentration camps during World War II. At Auschwitz, under the direction of Dr. Edward Wirtz, selected inmates were subjected to various experiments which were supposedly designed to help German military personnel in combat situations, to aid in the recovery of military personnel that had been injured, and to advance the racial ideology backed by the Third Reich. Experiments on twin children in concentration camps were created to show the similarities and differences in the genetic and eugenics of twins, as well as to see if the human body can be unnaturally manipulated. The central leaders of the experiments was Dr. Joseph Mengele, who performed experiments on over 1,500 sets of imprisoned twins, of which fewer than 200 individuals survived the studies. Dr. Mengele organized the testing of genetics in twins. The twins were arranged by age and sex and kept in barracks in between the test, which ranged from the injection of different chemicals into the eyes of the twins to see if it would change their colors, to literally sewing the twins together in hopes of creating conjoined twins. In 1942, the Luftwaffe conducted experiments to learn how to treat hypothermia. One study forced subjects to endure a tank of ice water for up to 3 hours. Another study placed prisoners naked in the open for several hours with temperatures below freezing. The experimenters assessed different ways of rewarming survivors. Finally, from about July 1942 to about September of 1943, experiments to investigate the effectiveness of sulfonamide, a synthetic antimicrobial agent, were conducted at Ravensbrück. Wounds inflicted on the subjects were infected with bacteria such as streptococcus, gas gangrene, and tetanus. Circulation of blood was interrupted by typing off blood vessels at both ends of the wound to create a condition similar to that of a battlefield wound. Infection was aggravated by forcing wood shavings and ground glass into the wounds. The infection was treated with sulfonamide and other drugs to determine their effectiveness. So that's it for this week's video. Thank you so much for watching and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like. Until the next video, goodbye.